Thank you so much. I will have to apologize because Madam Diva is a bit disturbed by flu, and then she might not be able to give you the original voice of her originality. But I really hope that she will also give you the benefit of her presence here. And thank you all for accepting the invitation and serving as panelists in this discussion. So, this conference is centered on the theme of fostering a progressive Gambia that is anchored on patriotism, diversity, and inclusion towards national development. Now, the first question that everybody would want to ask, would want to know, is what are the perspectives, or what is diversity, inclusion, and also patriotism? Well, we shall define some of these concepts along the way. So, starting with you, Mr. Kanye, knowing that you are fully active in promoting peace and other things within this country, you realize that the Gambia as a sub-state has undergone a rich historical trajectory, rising from the ashes of colonialism, numerous political and economic developments, and shifts have been done. So what is your measurement of the historical trajectory of the country, the Gambia?
Thank you so much for the question. He's asking what is my measurement of the historical trajectory of this country. Now, the Gambia gaining independence in 1965 brought to an end over 300 years of colonial rule, after which we had our own central government, and there were a lot of developments that were registered over the span of the 30 years led within the first regime. However, there were also things involved along the line, and apparently in 1994 we had a change of government that took us up to 2016 when we had the third government in place now. Now, historically, when you look at it politically, there has been some disturbances along the line, whether you refer to that as political enmity being so much surfacing in our political space. It could also be looked at from the social angle. This is a country that has diverse people living together, whether you refer to that as tribes or people of different stratas within the economic ladder. But we have existed together and we have lived together in peace and harmony for the longest period of time. Along the line, when you look at it from other angles, such as the civil service of this country, I know, like most of you here would believe, that there were moments in the country's history when the civil service of this country was almost next to none within Africa. We were informed, rightfully, that a company like Gantel was only second to South Africa and of the first 10 in terms of excellent telecommunication in the whole world. Along the line, some of those things got affected, and part of which we would attribute it to was the leadership of the country at the time. However, not all was actually lost, because there had been some tremendous improvements as well, especially on the side of education. Now, we must see education as the tool that unlocks the potential of a nation. And that is what the introduction of higher education in this country has led to, starting from the university extension program to the University of the Gambia. Today, this country can boast of a high number of graduates who are PhD holders, master's degree holders, first degree holders across the world. And they are doing tremendously well. So when we question or interrogate our past, especially historically, we must be fair enough that yes, there had been some hitches, there had been some very difficult moments in our trajectory, but along the line, there were things that we should definitely be in a position to celebrate, and I hope we'll get to that again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kani. I think your assessment of historical trajectory of this country actually has given us a light as to with the optimistic view that even though it might have been a bit overshadowed by certain issues, but there is a hope for a better country. Now, coming to you, Mr. Lagami, drawing assessment from the country's history in the First Republic of the Gambia, what is your assessment of the country's level of development?
Thank you, Mr. So, in my perspective or assessment, when you talk about country's development, it will be very, very difficult to give just a single dimension. For proper understanding, it is very appropriate to give sectors as far as development is concerned. So in that regard, I wish to look at indicators as far as maybe economic is concerned, as far as political relations is concerned, or nature is concerned, and as well as social norms, social indicators as well. So if you look at economics, you ask yourself questions such as, what truly drives our economy as a nation? Are we so much relying on potentials we have in our country? Are we so much in this market, or do we determine anything in the market? So these are some of the questions you ask, and answers to these actually give you proper assessment as far as development is concerned, but specifically economic development. I'll come to some of my personal answers to this. But first, we also need to look at also indicators that have to do with the social norms. Do we have the capacity to enhance the social norms and social beliefs of our people? Do we also have the capacity, or do we have the required
in order? So I don't know if question 3 is okay with you.
We have, for example, a very strong or very vibrant health system in the country.
If you are not okay with 3, I can take 3, you take 4.
That our
It's okay.
as human rights are intact. So answers to this actually give assessment as far as our country's development is concerned. So specifically economics. If you look at our country, we do not rely on any homemade economic activity. Most of the things that we rely on as a country are either imported. That is, in other words, we don't have strong muscles as far as export capacity is concerned. And when we talk about export capacity, these are things that determine what the stance of a country in both continental and world space. But if we do not have, it's not as if we don't also have the resources, both human as well as natural, to fit in our economic muscle. I want to believe that it is just that we do not so much tap into those potentials at this stage. So looking at history from now, I'm not talking about the future, I'm not saying we're not going to tap into this potential, but from history to now, or from independence to now, we've not been tapping into the potentials and both natural and also human-wise as far as this country is concerned. Or even if we were, it was not also optimized. So if coming to issues or questions related to the level of dependency, we also rely on international commodities as well. In this country, do not quote my statistics. In this country, most of our activities, or most of our commodities that are imported, are imported. We rely so less on things that are homemade, or we attach so much or less value to those things. Like for example, an instance as far as daily life is concerned. A shoe that is made in the Gambia is less valuable than a shoe that is made abroad. Whether that shoe that is made in the Gambia is having the best quality, we don't really care. In fact, how we brag for our colleagues is that this is made in the UK. It's not as if this is quality or not. This is made in the UK, it's also made in the Gambia. So by default, I have the best product. So it is not as if it is just the fact that we don't value ourselves, but also it has to do with the fact that it has to do with mentality as well. And the only way to change about that mentality, we need to look at force at the level of the government. What is the government doing in order to change the narrative? If the narrative is changed, then people have the trust as far as our communities are concerned. When the trust is imposed on our communities, then the economy starts moving, and then we have reliance as far as our internal communities is concerned. So permit me to also shift to some of the social indicators. Do we ask ourselves what is the level of dependency in this country? And how is that impacting our society as well? If you come to the Gambia, we have a very separated nation, in the sense that the level of literacy is very, very high in the urban area, and the contrary is happening in the rural area. That is to prove to you that most of the focus as far as literacy is concerned is in the urban area, and that really affects that of the rural area. And then in order to have very uniform development, it cannot be one-sided. So that is also another downside as far as our development is concerned, from 1965 to now. And that also has some indicators on also our economic power or economic muscles as well. So what I want to also conclude on, as far as this is concerned, has to do with the political indicators as well. Do we really value rights in our country? From independence to now, where rights is valued, where rights in general, or specifically human rights valued, where the citizen fraternity or citizen really incorporated as far as national development is concerned, national discussion, or where the potential individual is also incorporated. A potential individual, I want to believe here, we are talking about the young people that encompasses, or should I say that make up about 65% of our population. We are really involved from 1965 to now as far as national development is concerned. Even if they were, from my perspective or my assessment, it was done at a very minimal percentage. And that is also having some lapses as far as our development is concerned. And lastly, has to do with also discrimination as far as we are concerned, whether it is on the line of ethnic, as rightly introduced by my able boss here, Mr. Kani, or whether it is on the line of gender, or whether it is on the line of territorial jurisdiction that is currently over in the rural area. And my assessment on that has always been poor. So the good side of all these indicators, as rightly mentioned, is that there is an attempted effort to all these, but the downside is they are not really optimized. Okay. So my assessment of the development of this country is it's on the low side, and if really we as a citizenry or the public servants also take our development as a concern, that these are areas that they really want to optimize and keep up running. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gumane. I believe that assessment also has quite taken us through the different dimensions of a country's development trajectory. Talking about the political sphere, going down to the social dimensions, to the economic perspectives as well, are crucial indicators that every country would have to consider in trying to promote development. And you've raised very important questions, especially when you say, in the political dimension, do we value rights? And fortunately for us, that question is asked in the presence of a commissioner in the National Human Rights Commission. And I believe she would want to indulge citizens to also understand what rights are and how that could be used also in promoting development. I know Mr. Kanye also want to send a few lights on the previous questions.
Before Mr. Kanye comes in, I just want to clarify, I'm not here in my capacity.
This is I agree. He's asking for number 2.
Okay.
Okay.
The part-time lecturer. So looking at the audience, where we have a high number of young people, engaging them as much as possible in understanding democratization of this country as we transition, and central to that being human rights. So I just wanted to make that clear. ahead.
Right.
And because I have the mic, if I could just quickly, is that okay?
Yeah.
I feel bad, Mr. Kanyi. Like I said, I'm trying to avoid spreading the flu, so excuse my manners or lack of it at the table. I'm coming to your question, Siman, talking about the assessment of the country's history from 1994 to 2021. I think, like Mr. Kanye said earlier, it's important we start from the Gambia's history, from the First Republic, Second Republic, and then looking at the governance that we have now. But going back to my question, analyzing the country's democratization and human rights, I think from 1994 to 2021, after the coup, with the type of governance that we have seen, has really hampered the democratization process that we had been lifted up from by the first president, in whose honor we're holding this conference, that's the late Dawda Kairaba Jawara. And to come back to Lagame's point that these are very cross-cutting issues. When we talk about human rights being central to the consolidation of our democracy, I think we need to look at human rights in a very broad sense, to look at the political, the socio-cultural, and other aspects of human rights. And when we assess those in the past republic, we think that every sector on the human rights was hindered in so many ways. And a lot of that, I think, unfortunately, having the young population of the Gambia being born and bred during that era has led us to maybe trying to focus on informing the young generation about what human rights are all about and how they are central to. So there's a lot of unlearning to be done in this country. There's a lot of misconceptions to be cleared out in this country with regards to human rights. And I think that is also very much attached to the past regime institutionalization of democratic, of human rights abuses, where we saw these abuses becoming systematic, right? Where we saw institutions where these central points of the violation of human rights in this country. And that was how we saw democratization suffering in so many ways. Whether you talk about, the first thing we need to understand that when we talk in this country about human rights violations, people focusing on torture with the TRRC happening also, we need to understand that human rights go beyond the civil and political rights, things like torture, but it goes into the economic and social aspects. When you talk about the speaker earlier talked about the presence of girls in this room, the drive we have for these girls, and the high level of SGBT being one of the key barriers to women's empowerment in this country, and other barriers being central, again, going back to the former government, and how this was systematic, I think is one of the key ways that our democratization process was hindered. So going back to the fact that it's not just political, it's not just the arrest of journalists that we saw in this country, it's not just the violations of freedom of expression, but going down to issues like corruption, right, which are still lingering in our country right now. And how are those central to ensuring that we get back the level of democratization we had gotten from the First Republic? I think that lies on assessing that regime's utter disregard. Is that me?
It's them. No, it's not you. It is not you.
I think that lies with the addressing, going back to undoing the past regime's utter disregard for human rights. And when we do that, we need to refocus, like review the regime's way of violating these rights. And that has to focus on the cross-cutting nature of human rights, not just focusing on the political, but looking at the socio-cultural. When we talk about education, I know that Mr. Kanye here has acknowledged the presence of the University of the Gambia and how many good graduates it has provided. But then when we revisit that again, are we going at the same trend that we saw with the post-Republic? Are we going at the same trend? If we were going at the same trend, with the level of education, with the level of institutions that we had seen in the post-Republic, and then that being cut short by the Second Republic, I wouldn't say we necessarily have progressive education in this country. So it's about in assessing that, I believe it's about addressing the cross-cutting nature of human rights, the political, the civil, the economic, the social, and those all go back to the grassroots levels. And we've seen that in that, assessing the past regime again, is that it did not just stop at office, the violations of these rights, or the disregard of these rights. But even these grassroots levels, whether it's NGOs or CSOs or communities, were divided by this regime. We saw the witchcraft happening. We saw the tribalism used as a tool of governance in that regime. So it's a very big cross-cutting question. And I think when I assess that regime and how much it has hampered democratization in this country, it cannot be overemphasized. But I've seen with the way the discussions are going, some of these will be addressed, and I hope that they would focus on not just this event, but in trying to inform our young generation that when we talk about democratization, when we talk about human rights and its respect in this country, we need more information, we need learning, and we need to understand the basis of human rights as cross-cutting, going down from government to the grassroots, and that will take the conversation forward.
Correct. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, madam. I believe this is one reason why the previous speaker did emphasize the purpose of empowering women, because you can see the intellectual pedigree of what she has just given us, right? So, Mr. Kanye, you want to act on the previous section before we move to the next?
No, we'll move on.
Okay. So, coming back to you, Mr. Kanye, central to the theme of the second edition of the Dawda Kairaba Jawara National Peace Conference is a concept of diversity. Now, what is diversity, and what value does it have to the promotion of national development?
Basically, when you say diversity, you're looking at embracing people of different cultures, people of different backgrounds, people of different ethnicities, right? People of different races as well. That is diversity, in short. However, as far as this generation is concerned, I am very careful when we talk about diversity and inclusion, right? So speakers or someone else may tend to disagree, and that's fine with me. I like engagements as long as we're all going to learn something at the end of the day. So diversity in accordance with our norms, in accordance with our cultures, in accordance with our values. So if you tell me diversity as a question, what it is, I will tell you simply, it is embracing everyone that fits within our cultures, within our norms, and within our values. Right? Any other thing that is outside those ones, it is up to you to find your own definition of it. And I'm fine with that. Is that okay? Is that okay?
I believe so.
All right. I don't want to throw questions on you. But if I should ask somebody here from this audience, yeah? Let's be more interactive here. As a Gambian, as an African, as a man of culture, would you agree or disagree if I should say embracing my next door neighbor who is a gay is also diversity? What is going to be your positions? I want honest answers. You would disagree. Why? Because you would not consider it as part of your culture.
It's not compatible with my culture.
Okay.
Customs and norms and my religion.
And your religion. Culture, customs, norms, and religion. Okay. Who else has anything for or against? You don't have to agree with us. You can disagree. Yes.
If I can fully recall what you said, like it has to be something that is like fall under our own context. So we mean that as the public of the Gambia, we don't like being a gay is not according to our culture. So automatically, I
Okay. So for the purpose of this conversation, it is important that we highlight some certain things. You may disagree with somebody, you disagree with the person's way of life, but if you are not the authority, please don't take the law into your own hands. And the reason why I'm saying this, because I agree with your answers, and that is exactly my position. I do not consider diversity that you have to force things down my throat to be accepted. You know the Senegalese footballer? You know about that story? Now that is like diversity and inclusion, but you are forcing somebody to appreciate something that is against his norms, his values, his religion. I would not consider that to be diversity, in all honesty. However, I believe that if you are not the authority, then please do not take the law into your own hands. If you're looking at this from the religious angle, for example, we know that in Sharia, it's an authority that should execute the had. Had is what you call punishment in Sharia. So if somebody does blasphemy, who is supposed to kill that individual? It is supposed to be the authority that is going to be responsible for that. So it is not me on the street who just walks and gets the person, chop off his head and say, no, because it was blasphemous. We have to be careful. Now, when we embrace diversity, what are some of the advantages that we stand to gain in the society? One, diversity enhances political efficacy. And political efficacy is citizens naturally feeling and having this conviction very strong in them that, you know what, my political involvement can result to a social change. Do you understand this? My political involvement can result to a social change. So because they have that conviction in them, they are moved, they are enticed, they are encouraged to participate effectively in the political scheme or landscape. Another thing that diversity promotes is it increases the level of citizens' political awareness. And you know, if you become politically conscious, the likelihood is that you would be able to, at any point in time, define what trajectory your nation should take in order to usher in the development that the country needs to be a part and remain relevant in the development sphere of the 21st century. If you do not embrace diversity, then you lose out on that. And not embracing diversity here would mean you being yourself, thinking you know it all, you have it all, and you are content. Or you and your small circle, your group, thinking you know it all, you have it all, you are content. But diversity is opening your gate, opening the door. Let more people in. Let more brains come up. And let, kind of create that platform where ideas are going to be exchanged adequately. Now, when we improve on our diversity, especially in terms of representation in government, diversity plays a key role in maintaining our core public values and enhancing the social mobility as well as improving on policy effectiveness. All right? So please, we have a panel, and panel discussions could sometimes be very boring, and within us there could be some distractions, but let's try as much as possible, because we are coming back to the audience and we want to know your positions on what we are discussing here. And it will equally be healthy if you disagree with our positions so that we can have a healthier conversation. I hope that's okay. Thank you. Please hold it.
I just wanted to emphasize not taking the law in your own hands. We're talking to young people here. We're talking to Gambians here, a very sentimental society.
Correct.
In no way condoning, I'm in no way condoning pushing things down our throats. But one thing I just wanted to point out with regards to diversity and accepting people for who they are here, it's not necessarily you condoning the ethnic minority for certain things, right? Or the other forms of minority, gays or whatever, or a religious sect. But one key thing about diversity is inaction or refraining. You have to sometimes, even if you don't agree, is you refrain from taking any action. Do you get the point I'm trying to make? So you might not necessarily, I'm not saying, I need to emphasize this, I'm not saying that we welcome certain things. But one thing about ensuring peace, because we know that what happened during the Holocaust was Hitler and the others felt like the Jews were, like they were not enough for that society. Yeah. They were inferior and all of that. And they took the laws and they tried to get rid of them. They had every right to disagree. They had every right to have their differences. But the problem lies with when you try to take action. So I want to emphasize that when we talk about accommodating people, sometimes we are not just saying that you have to accept everything they do. If you don't accept, work on how you refrain from taking action as well. I just wanted to emphasize.
You want?
I think this is very important for us to control as a people, as far as this country is concerned, we need to ask ourselves what is diversity to us. And if you ask me, first of all, I want to make it very clear, diversity is not bad. We have to untangle that from our minds first. It does not mean that people or a group of people are coming from different sectors, that is a bad thing. And that leads us to another step. If this is not bad, how do I react to it? That is what actually matters as far as diversity is concerned. If we are of all this, if we are all of the same qualities and from the same background, then there is needless to talk about how different we are and how we are going. It is because we all have different capabilities, different gender, different perspective of thinking, different cultural norms. That is why it is very key to emphasize our diversity and how we accommodate others. Diversity is not true diversity, or will not be interpreted as true diversity if we do not know how to treat the next person that is divergent from us, that is different from us. If Mr. Khan here is a Muslim and I am a Christian, if I am unable to accommodate him and his principle of Islam, then I am not diverse. I am not diverse enough, or I am not inclusive enough. That is the issue, because the issue is not just the difference. No matter how well you try, no matter how far you go, the differences are natural, they are there. So there is no debate on whether we are divergent or not. That is there. The debate of is on the inclusive part. And you ask some questions that will lead to proper answers. For example, have you ever been in a situation where you know that this particular individual, like for instance you are a guy, and you know this person is a lady, but you understand that you cannot be disabled? That is because you know that you are a guy, she's a lady, you cannot be disabled because of your differences. That is understanding. That is the positive side, because I don't talk about that because it is positive. We talk about the negative side. He is a guy, he has a different perspective of how I think I am a guy too. But I don't even want to see him in the first place. I don't just want to give him space or next to him. I don't want to see his existence at all. That is actually on the negative side. So what is the difference between these two scenarios? It's because one, we are familiar and we are very familiar with one of the differences. The other one, we are not familiar with the differences, but we don't want to accommodate at all. Do you understand? And the last part I also want to talk about is accommodation. There is a difference between accommodation and transforming yourself. I can accommodate someone that is a Muslim in my house. Does not necessarily mean that I am converted to becoming a Muslim. I need to repeat that. It does not, I'm not sure if that ever. Ahmed is a Muslim again, I'm a Christian. But the simple fact that I accommodated Ahmed into my house does not mean that I am converted into Islam. No? So that we need to differentiate. There is a difference between accommodation and transformation. So let's try by all means we have that at the back of our mind. And yes, you have all right to uphold your principles in life, and so long as they are right and according to natural justice, you must be commended for all your rights and your
Interesting. One thing is key in all the submissions. Madam Diba has been very clear that it is not about actions, but refraining from it. Like for instance, if you don't want to accept gayism in the country because it is against our cultural values, norms and customs, like Iran says. Now we should not take actions against those who are seen as gays, because taking action would be a violation of their fundamental human rights. So it is a very complex issue, like the Iran said, but then something is key. It is not transformation, but accommodation. I think that is also crucial from the perspective of Mr. Gumani. So for the fact that we running out of time, I'll indulge your participants to give brief answers so we can easily take a paper. So coming down to Mr. Gumani, in some decades of our country's political landscape, multi-ethnic composition and difference in religious beliefs, we have observed numerous partisanship, hate speeches, and propaganda within the country. Now, realizing the threat such issues can trigger, what is your assessment of the situation, the challenges it may pose, and what could be done towards this particular issue?
6, right?
I also want to establish facts before we move on. Here we also have something like multi-ethnic composition. That is fact, that is bad. We also have propaganda. Propaganda is most of the time very blown out of context. Yeah? In the country, propaganda does not mean doing bad thing against someone. It's pushing your agenda. That is propaganda. Pushing your agenda by all means. Whether that's good thing or not. So the good side, we should not lose sight of that. Let's also be on that same page before we progress. Yeah. And also we ask the last one, hate speech. Yes. And also hate speech is most often blown out of context in the Gambia Africa as well. Seaman is part of party red and I'm part of party black. If I tell people that you should vote for me because Seaman party red during their time in the past regime did not establish schools, did not give you good care as far as health is concerned, if they are fact about Seaman, but the fact that I am talking about Seaman does not mean speak. I can speak against someone on the true sense, but it is not hate speech. So now, what is hate speech? That is the biggest question we should ask ourselves most of the time. Sometimes you go to the community, you see people's perspective of hate speech, you tend to ask yourself, are we really educating people on what exactly about hate speech? Most of the time, in peaceful, we will tell you that hate speech is something that when you want to say or want to communicate incites violence or incites or tends to pose hatred to a particular group of people on the basis of sex orientation, on the basis of difference in general. You understand? Whether it's your sex orientation, whether it's your political belief, or whether it's your on the basis of race, on the basis of religion, that amounts to hate speech. Because my intention there is to humiliate you. My humiliation my intention there is to pose hatred, not just my hatred, but also people that you want to contribute to pose hatred on you. That is what amounts to hate speech. From 1994 to now, from 1965 to 1994, history would tell less about history. Because even if it was there, it was very less. Records of it are very, very less. But from 1994 to 2016 or to now, there were a series of hate speech given, some attached to media houses, some attached to ethnic groups, some attached to people living with disabilities, and also some attached to territorial jurisdictions as well. You will see some individuals or some prominent individuals coming in public spaces telling you that you are not having development because this territory is not in support of me, and as such you will suffer. That point is taken. You understand? So now, my assessment of that is it has been occurring. But the people in public services, or the people with political muscles, are doing less about it. You don't come hate speech by going to people that feel hate speech or are subject of hate speech. You come hate speech by most of the time the doers of hate speech. Prominent people are most of the time doers of hate speech. I have not said the other people that are not prominent don't go into hate speech. That was the plan. So that the media has to run the system. That's fine. So we need to also take note of that. The last thing I also want to talk about as far as HTV is concerned, or as far as my assessment, as far as my assessment of hate speech is concerned in this country, is the fact that we don't really want to incorporate that into our educational system. And this is not only very unique to hate speech. I am of the belief that if we are truly concerned about changing this country, most of our realities must reflect on our educational system. Our educational system are truly realities of the country. They are realities of other people's perspective that we feel should be our perspective. So it's so long as those things are not, our educational system is not a reflection of us as a people and our happening and things that we must foresee, then we are moving but at the snail's pace. So this is our personal assessment as far as our case is concerned. So I'm sure my boss want to throw light on this.
Yes, I consider this question to me being the most important one today. And that is why I want us to have a very frank discussion. The question mentions certain things that are important. One, our political landscape, the differences, our multi-ethnic composition, and our religious differences. Now, when it comes to the multi-ethnic composition, this has never been a problem in this country. We know for one thing that if you are a Banimunka and you have a problem in your house, the guy can come and look at you in the face and tell you, you know what, stop what you're doing. To your own family and yourself. Why? Because we value our cultural relations. That's what they did. We know if you are a giant and you have a problem, a new maker can come and bail you. Just like our grandfathers bailed their grandfather when he was actually going to be killed. We know these things existed. So our multi-ethnic composition has always been an excellent thing that we can leverage on in order to ensure that we have inclusion in our society. We will be much better until when we take switch onto the political landscape. And the question now is, what is the level of it and what could be done about it? The hypocrisy of the political leadership is the only problem why we are not able to address hate speech in our community. If you want to ensure that there is justice in any system, you start with justice with yourself. Like the Prophet told Fatima that if you are the one to steal, they will chop off your hand, and I will not have anything to do with that. Do you understand what level of justice that means? If there is hate speech, it is promoted by our politicians on their platforms and they do not address it. Until and unless we start looking inwards and find policies to ensure that hate speech is penalized and criminalized in this country, we will not move forward. Saying that what I would expect
definition. If hate speech is promoted on your platform, we first try to stop it right there. Nip it in the bud. Don't wait until tomorrow. Don't hold the person behind doors and think you are advising the individual. Do you even understand that there are some power that has to be done openly? Do we understand that as Muslims? As Christians, there are certain level of sins if you commit them, you can make your power in your house. But certain level of sins when you do that, you have to come over and tell people, you know what, my position was wrong. I am making repentance over this. So let us understand that there are certain things that must be condemned in the public. We cannot do that like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kanye. I really admire the passion there, and I think the message was taken. Because of time, I just want to take it further. I know we get again passionate when it comes to political actors and their responsibilities. But I just want to take it further when we talk about propaganda, defamation, and all. When we say responsibility, he put it eloquently, political actors and leaders. But then the part of that responsibility lies on us as individuals as well. We live in an era where the world is at our fingertips. We live in the world of hashtags, these young people. There's a lot of damage that we are also causing when it comes to defamation, when it comes to hate speeches, when it comes to the way we trigger some of the problems that happen here. I know that this sort of arguments got heated up during the election era, but then when that dies down, we are coming to the end of the political cycle. Does that mean after that we address these issues as a country? I believe we have not necessarily addressed it.
Correct.
I believe that we have not necessarily upheld the diversity that we are calling for. So I just want us to also look within. How much are you contributing in this defamation? How much are you contributing into these hate speeches? Because sometimes, is it a Facebook post that you are also full that is defaming someone? Are you a person who feeds off of misinformation and disinformation, which are becoming very problematic in this country? So in as much as we hold the political leaders, we hold public figures responsible, I think a very key responsibility lies on students, as mothers, as educators. The list goes on and on. Hate speech is the way it is becoming an issue in this country. I think, yes, we hold them responsible, but it goes beyond public officials. Let's look within and also see how much we're willing and address our own issues.
Thank you so much.
When you're flanked by men and women of substance, it is always hard to push them to the corner. But then the MC is also on my neck that the time has elapsed, so I will just briefly move to some part of the other questions that need to be asked before we take a leave, and then we will possibly take one or two questions or comments from the audience, and then we wrap it up there.
Why don't you take just one question here, and then you send two to the audience, and we close that.
Each one of us can choose one key question.
Okay. We just each one of us one question. We choose ourselves, and then we just close it.
Okay, that's fair. So you may do.
No, let me start.
Choose a question from there. The one that we put out on the screen. So we are looking for a way to maximize the output but minimize the time we are going to spend on that. So we have 15 set of questions to be asked, but in the fact that we've started with 80 and it's almost 1 o'clock, we would want to compress it up.
I want to take 7. I will take 7, yeah?
So a question to Mr. Khan. In the past decades, many countries have shifted their attention to the promotion of an all-inclusive governance structure that propels national development. Now, what relevance does inclusion have to the promotion of national development?
Great one. And my last one for the day. I'm so happy. Okay, so what is the concept of inclusion? And how do we actually say there is an inclusive society? Inclusion just don't have to be the word inclusion. There has to be policies. Policies that ensure that people are granted equal opportunities and growth possibilities, especially the people we consider to be the marginalized in our society. That is the general meaning of inclusion. So I go over again. Basically what it means is putting in place policies that would ensure that people are granted these equal opportunities and growth possibilities as well, especially those people who are considered to be the marginalized community. Is that clear? Now, inclusion in the context of the Gambia. It was just this morning I learned that, you know what, before the institution of the 1997 constitution of this country, do you know that the voting age in this country was 21? Yes, it was 21 until the 1997 constitution came into effect. Now imagine how many young able-bodied Gambians are between the ages 18 and probably 20.999 before they turn 21. You can imagine that population. And obviously you are talking about people who are mature enough. Because in the Gambia, if you go to school by the age of 7, by 17, 18, you finish grade 12. Is that okay? 17, 18, you finish. So we are talking about 18, 19, 20. 18, 19, 20. One of my colleagues from the UTG, final year, the guy finished his BSc at the age of 22. So he was going to be disenfranchised in the previous constitution that we had before the 1997 constitution. So then I said to myself, oh, okay, so it was not all bad in the 97 constitution. Basically. So when you talk about inclusion, you are saying, let us widen the door, let us widen the gate, so that we can tap on more potentials, more brains, more intelligent souls. And automatically what this is going to gear towards is going to spur improved productivity and innovation in the country. And obviously innovation is the driving force behind any economy in the world. Right? If all of us would have gone to the GT Bank today because you have some money sent to you, how long do you think we are going to be there? You go to the bank and you spend like 3 hours, 4 hours. Man, we are talking about 4 productive hours of your day wasted because you are on a queue. But you can merely go to the ATM today and just cash your money. Within 2-3 minutes, you are out of the space. Now that 3 hours, some 58 seconds or 58 minutes that is left could be utilized into something else. That is what innovation and inclusion brings into the society. But once we disadvantage other people, we put them aside because we think they do not matter. What it does naturally to the economy of that country is that those people do not see themselves as people belonging. And because they do not see themselves as people belonging, that knowledge and ability to innovate and spur productivity that they are embedded with, they do not tend to share. That is the worst scenario that you can have in a society where people are not inclusive. So we must realize one thing as young Gambians, and I have to say this again, we must, there is no but to that. We must be people who are mature. And this sentimentalism in us, we have to be able to control it. We are a nation who so emotional in this country. Like she said, now let us become more responsible ourselves. When it is hate speech in your WhatsApp, what is going to be your task?
to ensure an inclusive society. As long as this is going to damage the fabric of my society, I would not be the one to promote that hate speech anywhere in the society. This is what we need to look at. When we talk about diversity, let us embrace other people. And you know what? Embracing other people does not mean bringing everyone within your inner circle. You have to get your inner circle. It is only people that you can relate with, you can learn from, who will inspire you and motivate you, who will make it into my inner circle. So because you are my acquaintance on the street never makes you my friend. So identify your acquaintances and know your friends. It is your friends who can penetrate your inner circle. They will sit you down and talk to you, and you will consider each one of your friends as a potential mentor, because they will speak sense to you with sincerity. And because they talk to you from their hearts, it will directly impact on your life. The other people can be your acquaintances. And there are certain people who may not even ever make it into my inner circle, because I believe you do not fall within the social strata that I subscribe to. But that would not make me cut off your head, because I understand that there is an authority that is responsible for everything in a society, and I do not want to be that person who takes the law into my own hands. Now, what is going to be your level of iman when it comes to that authority and your relationship with him? If I see something that is wrong, I know for one thing, if I am the authority, I can make sure that I put a stop to it. But if you are not the authority, what do? You can speak against it with wisdom. Speak against something so that you are able to change or influence the mentality and the thoughts of other people, so that they do not see that thing that you consider to be evil as normal. Because there are certain things that are definitely evil. And because you don't want the rest of humanity to see them as evil, you preach, you talk about it, but with wisdom. And the least that you can do, like she said, is when I know that I do not have that level of wisdom to preach about it, and I am not the authority to execute rulings against it, then I refrain, even whereas it is the weakest of iman. May Allah forgive us. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khan. It's unfortunate that is your last question. But again, I must say that the amount of inspiration we can draw from your... What was I inside? What was my last word? The amount of inspiration we could draw from his analysis, assessments, and evaluations of our country's development trajectory should be a tax upon every citizen sitting down here to promote the development of this country. So I will have to say here, and then going to Madam Diva.
No, just from your mic. Say some question, please.
Yes, so Madam Diva, from your perspective, understanding the indescribable necessity of inclusion, what do you believe could be done to promote an inclusive framework in the pursuance of national goals?
Thank you very much, Sivan. I think this is related to his question as well, but I think we can't overemphasize inclusion. And when we talk about the necessity of inclusion with regards to pursuing our national goals, again, what are our national goals? Whether they are driven by the Sustainable Development Goals or whether they are driven by our national development plans, what are some of the things that you always come across in these national development goals? It has to do with health, it has to do with alleviating poverty, it has to do with freedoms, and you just name them. And when you look at all of them, right, when it's in terms of health, it's talking about maternal mortality, infant mortality, whether in terms of education or whether it's progressive or not, all of them, when you look at them, we talk about diversity in our country, right? And when we talk about diversity in this country, we talk about tribes, we talk about religions, and they are sort of, I wouldn't say trivial, but they are beautiful. They are what makes us as a country. But then the key word here is the inclusion. And when we focus, I believe, as a nation, as to what unites us, as opposed to what differentiates us, because I wouldn't say that diverse in that sense. they're very trivial. What differentiates us are very trivial and not very pertinent to our national development goals as compared to what unites us. Because what unites us as a nation is achieving a very low threshold of maternal mortality in this country, is achieving or breaking gender barriers in this country. And in mentioning that, I want us to also refocus a bit, because here when we talk about being diverse, a lot of the time the question that comes in, engage or include other ethnic minorities. We don't necessarily have ethnic minorities in this country. And when you look at African history, we were more of communities than we saw ourselves as different ethnic minorities. That's another whole level of history lesson. But where I'm trying to drive at is, how much are we focusing on that national development goal? How much are we focusing on achieving primary health care in this country, in achieving good education in this country, in achieving or ensuring the fundamental rights and freedoms of people in this country? When you look at those, how much does the difference between you being a Mandinka, a Fula, or a Jola come when it comes to what woman gets to the hospital in time before they pass away? When it comes to you receiving bloods, we don't have blood banks in this country. How many times have you heard that you belong to blood group A, B, or C, or you belong to a Fula group, or a Mandinka group, or a Jola group? And we are trying to get primary health care. So I think the question here is, we need to focus on a lot if we want to achieve an inclusive society which is geared towards achieving our national development goals. Focus on what unites us and what differentiates us, these diversities, as Lagami said earlier, as the beauty of our society and not necessarily something that divides us. Because these things are a way of just identifying, and then when you talk about, let's say, for instance, a Mandinka culture, like when you see a Mandinka Manyo or a Fula bride or something, these are the little things I'm saying. This is when those things matter, right? What do you do when you're doing your moor, as opposed to what does the Mandinka do or what the Jola does? These are social issues, and these have nothing to do with our national political issues. So when we talk about national development, when we talk about politics at national level, they have no place there. Do you understand? So these socio-cultural issues, we address them, we deal with them when they come. But when we talk about our national development goals, whether we are meeting international standards or not, my plea at this point is focusing on what unites us. What are we trying to achieve as a country? And when you look at those in depth, you would see that none of these other issues that differentiate us have a place in those discussions or in achieving those goals. Thank you.
Like this,
You know, if you give a farm a man to fix for himself, he's going to have some reasons. Alright, so you now circle down to the last question for the panel, which will be addressed to His Excellency Kagame Dumane, and then we will just kindly take 2 questions from the floor, and from there we wrap up with the panel. Mr. Gumane, Rwanda, a country that has passed through a bloody history in the genocide, has today developed to be one of the best high economies in the African continent. Would you regard patriotism as a key element in such a paradigm shift of its rapid growth, and what inspiration could Gambians draw from Rwandan's success?
You know what's funny? Rwanda is led by Paul Kagame. It is very similar to Paul Lagame. By the way, he's my Toma. We are all tall and we look alike to some extent. So, you see, when we talk about Rwanda and its development, They call it the Rwandan development. It is very unique because it is Rwandan development, where they came from and where they reached within the span. It just deserves to be called Rwandan development because, yes, to the question, patriotism has a very key contribution as far as their development is concerned. But the biggest question is, where exactly did they instill this patriotism? Or the level, or should I say the quality of patriotism? In my perspective, and for the purpose of time as well, I want to discuss 3 areas that they made sure that they instilled patriotism and it's paid dividend. One has to do with the youth. You see, Rwanda knew that they have, just like the Gambia, majority of their population are young people with vibrant energy and also vision and passion. So they made sure that they instilled patriotism in those people. But how did they do that? They focused on the educational system. Just as I said before, for every country to transform and develop, you must center your development agenda to what you are going to teach the next generation. You see, the older generation may have a lot to contribute as far as experience is concerned. But if we do not change the perspective and thinking of the young people that are budding, it will be a real concern as far as the country is concerned. You need to target, just like when you are organizing a program, you know that this is done already. So the next people to come, how do we target it? So that is the plan they made sure they had. And if you look at Rwanda now, the statistics will tell you that they have 97% of their young people educated. If 97% of the people are educated, but not any kind of education, but true education that reflects their true reality and also patriotism, the least you could have is development. That is the least you could have. Because if every single one of us have that patriotism in us, or have the passion to develop the country, irrespective of the positions we have, I see no room where you're going to have underdevelopment. So that was their thinking, that is the target, and it is paying dividend. You come to realize that they also localized their educational system. They made sure, as I said when I was responding to one of the questions, is that their educational system is a true reflection of not just their society, but also their workforces. They don't have courses that have to do with things that are not paid dividend to them. Everything that is studied in Rwanda have something to do with development in Rwanda, not development outside. Their first target is our country. We must produce the workforce for our country. We should not bring people outside as experts to develop our country. That was their target. So their education system was directly to their own needs, and that is also paying dividend. As far as the youth is concerned also, they even went to an extent of making sure that they, in 2001, if I'm not forgetting, have their new anthem, national anthem, and also flag. That symbolizes not just one of the tribes they had at the time, but also to show that the patriotism was not just theoretical. It was practical, and it started with the highest of authority, that is the government, and that shows political will. In every development, if you don't have political will backing it, or it does not start with political will, then its progress is very, very minimal. Another indicator they used was also the women empowerment. You see, Rwanda did not just set record. They set their record and break their own record as far as women participation is concerned. There was a time, as we speak right now, I think they have about 51 seats that are occupied by women out of 80. Or 51 out of 81. If I'm not getting the statistics very wrong. But it is that close. Imagine having a parliamentary seat that is dominant by women in Africa. It does not come by anyhow. It comes if you have policies too that are supporting it. And there is a policy supporting it. I think in Rwanda you have 30% of seats must be reserved for women in their parliament, so that to inject the patriotism and also the level of participation of women in their country in national discourse that gives confidence to every party, every person, irrespective of your gender and irrespective of your perspective. That is development. They are thinking the Rwandan way, I call it. And also they instill patriotism in the women as well through political participation and reforms and the like. So you see, you target the young people in general and target the women. Who else is left out? Because everybody is carried out. It's like a development agenda. Let's go develop. Every person have a role to play. You need not to be left behind. Lastly, has to do with the economy. In the beginning, I did indicate that one of the key indicators as far as development is concerned is economy. And then one of the sub-indicator is your export muscle. Rwanda made sure that they built their export muscle. And if you talk about teas and coffee, it's from Rwanda. They export it as much as possible so that they can build their economic muscle to see that we don't rely on external force to develop or to push our own agendas. They will tell you that he who feeds you teaches you or directs how you operate. So, but what if we feed ourselves? Then we push our own agenda. That is the mentality, the Rwandan way. They also have the Rwandan economic model that is also directed towards pushing the Rwanda agenda, not just within but also outside, and attracting people to come. If you are an Arsenal fan, most of the time you will see on the left arm, visit Rwanda. Oh, footballers. I mean, if you are not a football fan, you will not understand. On the left arm of Arsenal jerseys, you most of the time see visit Rwanda. It is an economic smartness. You understand? And as much as you have jerseys that are printed in England, if you go to Senegal, some jerseys are printed. But notwithstanding the fact that Rwanda do not sponsor those jerseys, they still have Visit Rwanda on their arms. That is publicity for Rwanda. It's the mentality. You must drive an agenda. You must have an agenda. So that is also a smart move to build also their economic agenda. If you want to talk about their good place as far as their development is concerned and things we can learn from, I think we need not just days to learn, but we also need centuries to learn from Rwanda and also need some great lectures. So these are some of the inspiration we can draw from Rwanda. I believe if we do, we are going to shift from one point to another. In summary, it has to do with policy, it has to do with culture, it has to do with education, the social norm, the social perspective, and also having a direction as far as the political landscape is concerned.
Interesting. If I want to ask one more question, somebody will come here with a grenade on my face. So, I believe you all enjoy liberation from the panelists. And it is not just a process of listening, but a context of listening and practicing what you also be told. It is always a common saying in Chinua Achebe's own voice that we are the young soldiers who will rise when the old runner dies. So if we are to have any change within this country, it must begin from us. It should be us, the young people. And that is why this Gambia proposes on having the young people to create this commission. Now, without much ado, I will just want to take two short questions to the panelists before we take a leave of you. And I can vividly tell why Usman Toure decided to go to Rwanda instead of, was it? Yes.
Okay. There's this mic here.
They won't complete my mic system. They're not fully fixed. I was the DJ and then the DJ is no more there.
And you talk about diversity, Madam Dima, I love your analysis of it. We are the nation of Mandigo, nation of Christian Muslims, nation of blood and wine. I believe the Gambian people be a kind. Gambian people are smiling all the time. But now there are some who hold the pride of our politics. They hold the pride of our ethnicity. Then I'm a Dabo. I will never vote for Baba. But my family has been UDP. I will never vote for NPP. So, Madam Deba, what advice do you have to young people coming in?
So, if I understood the advice to young people,
advice to young people.
Young people, okay. So when you talk about political participation, is that what you're talking about? When it comes to making decisions or how to engage? Like I always say, we need to look beyond elections when we talk about political participation of young people. We need to look at patriotism in general, and your contribution to national development goes beyond just voting. And I think that's a trend we tend to see. Some are doing well. We've seen peace ambassadors, these ones, all of them try to engage beyond the electoral process. So I think for young people of this country, I would say that try to understand patriotism beyond just elections. And to come back to what you said about diversity and inclusion, did you say that? Is that when we talk about including each other or being diverse in our participation to national development, again, it's not just politics, it's not just voting. And I think when I started earlier here, I talked about, when we say inclusion again, I like that you gave the Dabo-Barrow analogy. It goes way beyond that, right? It goes way beyond tribe. It goes way beyond which religion you belong to when we are talking about how much you can contribute to the development of this country. For example, he talks about women empowerment in Rwanda. One of the key things that we saw, it's about understanding what are the areas that need to be tapped into in this country and then contributing towards those. So it's multifaceted. It goes for me to tell young people to participate to national development, goes beyond just who you are voting for or who you are rooting for. It's cross-cutting, it cuts the political, the socio-cultural, the economic. So when you focus on those, and when we talk about inclusion here, it's not just trying to say you should be accommodating to the Dabo or the Barrow or to the Mandinka or the Fula. How much do you recognize the social barriers that we have in this country that are hindering women from getting to key decision-making roles? Because one key question we ask in international relations or politics is, where are the women? You know that you're in school, right? Right now, from primary school, nursery school, look at them. You see girls excelling so many ways. But is that reflecting in the tertiary? Is that reflecting in the number of PhD holders we have in this country as women? Is that reflecting in the recent cabinet? Is that reflecting in parliament? It is all not there. So what is your role as a young person to address not just those political issues, but those social issues as well? Like, where are these girls? Where does the problem lie? How can we bring them along as they get to these key positions as well? That is just one aspect, women participation. You can talk about access to justice, access to health facilities. It goes on and on and on. So my main thing is, look beyond just elections and voting when it comes to national development or your participation.
Unfortunately, we again with the mic. It's unfortunate that I won't be able to take all the questions. We've run out of time. Oh, okay. I'm thinking, how do you get my mic? Alright, so since it's mic, it has to go ahead. Alright, guys, I'm so sorry. There is no time, and then we have to take a break. Yes, please.
Alright, thank you so much. My name is Patrick Arikesi, and I'm from Rwanda. What I would like to say, thank you so much for the kind words, the expressions about our campaign to Mr. President. Well, there are a lot of things that have been discussed here that are really okay, very inspiring, and I really admire what folks are doing here in Gambia. I'm pretty sure that such kind of engagement and definitely some people have sustainable peace and Gambia that we will dream about. But specifically, I'd like to bring us to some of the discussions with our hate speech. Well, back in Rwanda, because of our history, we started having conversations about hate speech way back, and this was institutionalized in different universities where several acts were told to notice hate speech. And what resulted was something that I have been working on, and it's a publication I'm working on that allows me to bring just some of the reflections. Our engagements over time in school have lost objectivity. they are driven by emotions. Because every single time someone says something that we don't agree with, something that is not within our lenses of experience, we write to post. We hardly hold constructive conversations. Our focus has entirely shifted on the impact on the impact of what we say and over the intentions. Like for instance, somebody comes and says something. Instead of us looking at the intention that somebody is using to say something, we focus on the impact of the outcome, which impact is often subjective because depending on the person that is listening. And as a result, many of our peers have been marginalized with their beliefs.
So sorry, you need more tissue?
The coddling of our minds, which is the protecting of our minds, as you advise that we have this in our university. The coddling of our minds could be emanating from our parents and guardians' good intentions to insulate us from having experienced the kind of misery they experienced from their own times. So they gave us the lenses to see certain things and fight them, instead of training us to be able to be strong and face some of these things. As a result, we've only been reduced to emotional thinkers, very good at reasoning. We are victims of group thinking. We are subscribing to the thought of us thinking, where we come in label. Some of them are bad and good. As you spoke about religion, we are tempted to see that these are Christians and these are Muslims. So whenever people say things, we end up in this kind of petty thinking. As you are trying to push for the same, we are complaining that our education and what we did is not really. We didn't achieve the aim of usual education. The education's aim is supposed to enable us to think, teach us how to think. And unfortunately, it has taught us how to notice bias. It has coded our minds, protected us from certain insecurities. I'll pose these questions to you. Do you think, as you go forward, you should be taking the same path that we took, protecting our minds from the dangers of the world? Because as you leave the Gambia here, elsewhere in the world, speech or hate speech is very, very common. Should we be prepared to face hate speech, other than calling it off and saying it should never be said? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I didn't want to cut in while you're talking because we tend to learn from Rwanda, and I think it was important. The question to me as a moderator will be shifted to Mr. Kairaba as well.
Okay, so in combating hate speech, there are a few things that come. Let's look at it from the political perspective. Now, in the Gambia, one reason why we have a lot of unnecessary propaganda and hate speech and insults, especially when it comes to politics, is because the political parties are not feeding their surrogates with the truth about what they stand for. It was only ahead of the 2021 presidential elections in this country that you have some political parties sharing their manifestos with the rest of humanity. Not many people were actually doing this. It was ahead of the presidential elections in 2021 that you had the transformative agenda of the PDOIs. Then we had the 5-point agenda of the UDP, and so on and so forth. These are good tools that will help to enlighten the citizenry, especially your political surrogates, to understand what your aim is if you should come to office. Do you know why they keep insulting everybody on the street? Because they really don't have anything to talk about. Whose fault is that? The political leadership. Tell your people what your party stands for, what your policies are when it comes to saving the economy of the country, what your policies are when it comes to the security of this country, what your policies are when it comes to agriculture, until it sinks in their head. So when they go to people, they talk to them about policies. But in the absence of policies, what do you think is going to happen? One or two things you are pushed to the corner, Masagande. Oh Lord. So when it comes to hate speech, there is one thing that I always believe, and that's what I propagate all the time. It is our leadership
who remain complicit in it. They remain complicit in it. The only solution to it is, if it emanates from my backyard, I'll put a nip in the bud. You would never be the one to talk about it again. And you know, take for example the President of the Republic. If for example somebody from your own party is found wanting when it comes to the propagation of hate speech, and the President, for example, let that go through the judicial process properly, your political involvement is not seen. Your advisors don't get involved at all. The judiciary decides that this guy should go to jail for the next 10 years, and you don't get involved at all. Honestly speaking, the next person on the street is not going to do it. If that person comes from your party, the next person from the next party is never going to do it. Yeah, you want the part of the a political party, you will suffer jail. Because that is going to automatically create that barrier. The next thing is to institute policies that you are never going to trade for anything. I visited your country, and the level of discipline that I saw in the young people of Rwanda is amazing. Even when they talk to you, they talk so softly. I went to the museum and I could not actually control myself. I shed tears. If you're told over 200,000 people are below that, the ground there, you cannot but be moved. No wonder my colleague here, my friend, my brother, my beloved, has chosen the Rwandan model as opposed to what obtains in the West. You know what? It is only when we realize that Africa has long been blessed, that history speaks so well of Africa. There was governance system in Africa before the coming of the Europeans. Yes, there was governance system. We know from our great grandfathers that when Mr. X has a problem with Mr. Y, they go to the Alcalo. We know that they will call community elders and they will talk about issues and they will finish it. We know when there are land problems, they will go to the Alcalo, and if it has to go beyond that, they go to the SEFO. But most often than not, it does not even go beyond the village. These problems are solved. So if you're talking about governance in Africa, yes, governance existed in Africa. If you're talking about proper leadership in Africa, we know historically we even had women leaders in Africa. So let us not be fooled to believe that it is only the West or the coming of the West that brought in development to Africa. That is a lie. And I'm sure you believe it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kani. I must say that this is one of the most dedicated panels I've ever hosted. And then kudos to the panel, starting from Madam Alimatu Diba, a lecturer of mine at the university, and among the greatest inspirations I have at the university when it comes to the political science division. And then to Mr. Kani for also being there when we invited you, and also showing to us that level of sagacity you always been with as a youth leader. And then another sense here to Mr. President, my president at the UTD Students Union, for also granting us the privilege to also have her as a panelist. And then to conclude with, Peace Gambia does not just want to make sure that we promote peace within the culture by theory, but we want to practice what we also preach. And from all the perspectives of what we have discussed here today, I will just say in a simple statement that what the Gambian needs is a Gambianized Gambian who Gambianizes the process in which we want to develop our country. On that note, I thank you all for being with us, and then those who couldn't ask the question also, I do apologize. I was your moderator, Simon. Thank you.
The panel for on our behalf. Thank you very much, Pat. And then young man from Rwanda, I love your country. And I love your country. Just after the 2 minutes, I received an education that they are going to speak. I took from last year at the conference, I said very well that if I have any Rwanda, just like this one day. So thank you very much for being here with us. We had Mrs. Olimatu Diba. Mr. Long? Hello, Mr. Long? Can we have this certification, please? All right, so Mr. Olimatu Diba, please, can you come back for a certificate? Mr. Den, can you come around to issue the certificate, please? Yeah. All right, so she has a pressing issue. So on that note, she is taking her leave. So we are going to certify her before she leaves. So Bakar Dem, the program manager for Peace Gambia and one of the founders of the organization, is going to issue the certificate. So can you clap for Madam? Madam, thank you very much for being in the panel. We are much honored to have you here. From that awarding, or while the awarding is on, the former Vice President of the Republic, Her Excellency Dr. Asif Ture, is also about to take her leave. So therefore, we are giving him the space to deliver her statement. And then, like I said earlier, the former Vice President is our former Vice President. Like when we went there, when he personally, from our own expense, was sponsored this program. And thank God, Madam President, Madam Vice President, food is served. Food is packed at the corner, and then we are going to see the one who sponsored the food bill and everything that is concerning this conference. So we are most grateful to her for that. Personally, when he signed the check, my nerve went off. I look at my colleagues and said, wow, the former Vice President has done all when she was serving as the Vice President. And then she was to travel, she told us that she was going to travel. But by all means, if she's not here, she's going to delegate someone on top of the finance that he has given us. Can we give her a round of applause? So that has shown with the seriousness with regards to the peace advocacy that she was doing before us. She was a staunch peace advocate during her early days. A former Minister of Health, a former Minister of Trade, and also a former Vice President. Very inspirational indeed. And to the young ladies, I believe this should serve as a motivation for having her with us. All right? So without much ado, the DJ, Password of Section 93, I exercise my powers and instruct that you play the National Anthem for the former Vice President to deliver her statement. So DJ, please, don't flout my orders. Yes, can you ask for that, please? Then we start. Yes. So, but the good news that the food is around. So, for the Nyomikas and some other, maybe Ture. Oh, I'm sorry, the VP is Ture. The food is going to be served. Are you set? Is the video set? No, the food is set. All right. So, after kind of 98, we start. 97, 98. We will start this DJ. It's an on-sound engineer. Yes. Are we set? Alright, it's good to exercise sometimes. So we stretch up. Reverse. Simon. No, this one is going to be. Yes, we have that. Alright, so yes, hold on. gentlemen, please join me to welcome Her Excellency, former Vice President of the Republic of the Gambia.
Thank you very much. Members of the Peace Gambia Initiative, the erudites, panelists, executive members of Peace Gambia, invited guests, the media fraternity present here today, men and women, the leaders of today and the leaders tomorrow, the young people. I want to say thank you very much, and to thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and address you here today. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to be here. And the reason why we started with the National Anthem, it is because it has to do with the reason why we started with the National Anthem, because it has to deal with the Gambia's philosophy. Everything that you have discussed here today is all about the National Anthem. If you take time to listen carefully to the National Anthem, and if you take time to understand it very well, it covers every aspect that you have talked about today. From the time I came, listening to the panelists, listening to the questions that you have asked, and to say that we are in the right direction. I am very pleased to be here to listen to you people as the young generation, the generation that is supposed to shape the history, the trajectory of development of the Gambia, and to move this country towards the right direction for your own benefits, for the benefit of your children, your families, and for the benefit of the future. I am very pleased to say that you are moving in the right direction. And I want to congratulate you also for taking the bold step of organizing such a great meeting conference today, bringing youths from different perspectives, from schools, out of school, and those that are in other enterprises that are different from what you are doing. And that is first and foremost to establish the diversity that you are talking about. Congratulations. I have listened carefully and I have taken some few notes just to reflect on. But before I do so, I just wanted to reflect and remind you of the purpose of this meeting. And that is, I'm sure you must have been told, but it is important in the field of education and knowledge sharing. You remind yourself of the purpose of why you are acting out and why you have come to such an august gathering to move this country and your agenda forward. It's very, very important because you are the leaders of today and tomorrow. I just want to quote from the concept, a beautiful concept paper that was written by the team of the Peace Gambia. And in the introduction, I just want to remind us of something. That is, Peace Gambia is a non-partisan, multi-ethnic, selfless-centered, and diversity-oriented organization compositely established with a resolute commitment to nurturing, building, promoting, and harnessing a peaceful Gambian society pillared on the acceptance of diversity, respect for human rights and democracy, all inclusivity, social cohesion, and the absence of ethnic sentimentalities
in the drive to national goals. The organization is a firm believer that patriotism and nationalism are required to build a nation and a world where man's desire for satisfaction, observance of rule of law, and individual endeavors are consistent in the promotion of national world peace and security. So the main issue here is about peace and security, and that's the fundamental basis, I believe, why the Peace Gambia was created. And I think this has to be understood coming from the context that you have been analyzing. And I'm very pleased that this has been clearly spelled out in your introduction. At the same time, you were also referring to a role model, Gambia's pride, Gambia's hope, Gambia's father of the nation, who is Dawda Kairaba Jawara, who has nurtured peace, who has brought in peace and left it behind us for us to inherit and be worship of. It is our gas and oil, peace. He left something that is very key that the Gambia should uphold, and I want to thank you all for creating that role model that has brought us to this level, for us to emulate him, to bring it today in this second session that we are doing today, of which I am a witness. I am very lucky also to be present or to be part of those initiatives that have been promoting peace and building on the pillars that His Excellency President Jawara has laid down. As a young activist, attending some of the efforts that he has made, I am very proud today to stand here and join all of you for promoting that concept of peace. He worked for the nation, he was promoting peace. He was a peaceful negotiator during the 1990s, and his efforts in establishing peace and harmony among Gambians, promoting tolerance and an all-inclusive governance structure for Gambians is recognized. And for that matter, I want to say you are following the right trajectory and the right role model to promote peace, development, and democracy in the Gambia. Now, having said that, because in everything that we do, the world, all countries are evolving, and they have gone a long way. I have heard you talk about the trajectories and the histories of some of the issues by the erudite panelists, all of them young, highly educated, robust, and grounded in your analysis. I am very proud of you to see that. It means the struggles that all of us have been making, the struggles that people who started before you is gaining fruition, is gaining benefits, is coming out, and it's a great pride that I stand here today. With happiness, with pleasure, and great sense of achievement to see the young generation picking up and building upon the earlier efforts within and outside the country to move the country forward. I thank you all for that. I want to remind you and to reflect on few things which are very key in guiding you through this great and laudable efforts that you have made. You have spoken, and the panelists have actually captured their questions and the issues that they were within the framework of the current Gambia, the past, the present, and the future. This is showing you a trajectory that is hopeful, a trajectory that is going to move this country forward, and a trajectory that will fulfill the aspirations of Gambians, the young ones, the future generations, those yet unborn, and for those of us who have witnessed 2 generations of governance in this country. What I want to emphasize here is to look at your contextual analysis that you have done, which is really great. You situated some of this within the groundwork of economic, political, social, values and norms, rule for law, rule of law, respect for rule of law, peaceful coexistence, ethnic divisions and compositions, hate speech, propaganda, and also you use the 3 key words that you are out to talk about: inclusivity, diversity, and what is the third word? Patriotism. You have brought me back to the academic field. You have brought me back to the field of academia, and we're going to discuss that. Just give me time so that we help each other to move on the right trajectory. What I want to talk about here is that you have to consider the whole issue of characteristics when you deal with context. The issues you raise here are very, very critical. They are very, very pertinent, and they have to be placed on. They must be framed within the frame of certain processes, so that you who are going to lead, you who are going to take responsibility, you who are going to be engaged constructively, will understand the circumstances and how you move with these processes in order to benefit you as individuals in your own right, but also as people who are going to serve institutions that require certain rules, norms, procedures, and processes to deal with, that also deal with policies and praxis, so that you will be able to engage constructively. Now, you talked about the context where we are coming from. That is indeed a fact. I would put you within the frame of the context that most of you were. If I look at this gathering today, most of you might have been born around the 90s and maybe a little before that. But I was born at a time where the First Republic was going on earlier. So I have the opportunity and the privilege to at least give a contextual analysis of the First Republic, the Second Republic, and Third Republic, in which I was an active player. Now, nothing is lost. It takes time to grow, and it takes time to develop. We have to build on what we have looked at. And your analysis, for you to have chosen His Excellency President Jawara as the peace advocate, something that the Gambia needs now, is a good example and a good omen for the Gambia, because it shows that everybody needs peace and security to move forward for development to take place. And that can only happen. You have to understand, at the time we came from colonial rule, as was rightly mentioned by the academics, we emerged from a colonial rule where countries in Africa wanted to have their own independence, where they wanted to have their own self-rule, and also to move from the bastion of control that come together and move to build their nations. And we have passed that level now. But of course, it's a point of reference for us to learn from, but not to keep on complaining and not do anything about it. We inherited them. They were there and it was going on. Now, our forefathers and mothers have worked and removed us from that level to become independent. They have self-rule, and from there they were building up the society, and moving on forward was not an easy thing. I want you people to understand. And through that process, they were able to get a point where we reached a point where we moved. There were big challenges, and those challenges might have led to some of the crises we heard that has resulted into the intervention, unconstitutional intervention of the Second Republic, which you have critically analyzed. When we talk about democracy, fundamental freedoms and civil liberties, it's about people deciding what they want, how they want it, who they want, and where, how to do it. But that was not the case in the second context, and I think you have analyzed that. I don't have to go deep into that. But we were dealt with serious crisis. Of course, we also have to give credit. There were some progress that did occur. And those progress is why some of us are here sitting down today. But we talked about the rule of law. Now, what is there that has affected us in the Second Republic is to learn from those challenges, is to walk through those challenges, recognize them, and vow never for it to happen again. Those are some of the things, because whatever you do, In everything you do, leadership is very important. And the type of leader you have is the type of legacy you are going to inherit. So those problems that we had, we all know were not very good, but we had to survive it. And we did it in a peaceful way and transformed to that stage. And we need to also remember that when you go through a process, you were talking about Gambians. I had one of the panelists talking about the sentimentalities. That's a fact. There are a lot of sentimentalities going around, but we can learn to forgive. We can learn to tolerate. We can learn to accommodate. We can learn to recognize the diversities. We should learn to recognize those things and follow the democratic principles which this regime is bringing in. We are trying to moderately engage in political democracy, in politics that is going to be inclusive, in politics that is going to be participative, in politics that will recognize these diversities and see how best we can harmonize them in order to promote peace. You talk about the diversity in terms of the different hues, the mosaic of characteristics that are there, being a Muslim, a Christian, with the ethnicities that are going on, with a level of education, those who did not have the opportunity, the rich and the poor. These are all diversities we have to recognize. But we need to put them into context. And it is those contexts, managing them is a challenge, and that is what we are facing. But it is going in the right direction. Now you look at the economy. You will have to look at the current situation. The Gambia has inherited a very difficult situation, yes. But we have tried to work hard, very hard, to ensure that the economy improves. But then there are other external factors that affect the economy. What is there? You have now Ukraine and the Russia war. And then you have an emerging Cold War, which is very intricate, that is affecting us. You talked about the Gambia depending on exports. Everything we get, we import it from outside. We import rice, we import everything. These are some of the things, but there are also efforts being done to improve agriculture. How do we change that dependency syndrome to self-reliance? Depends on the type of policies, the type of politics, the type of institutions that we build for ourselves, that we try to embrace in order to achieve our goal of self-dependence, self-development, and advancement. But the world is a global village, and we cannot exonerate ourselves from having partnerships. These partnerships should be based on comparative advantages in trying to nurture the democracy that we want to do in order to be able to move the country forward. And that is precisely what is happening now. All that we need to do is to have peaceful coexistence and be able to sustain that drive. What impact does it have on the economy if we do not promote peace? If we do not promote peace, people will not come here to invest. They will say the business climate is not friendly. They will say that we are not sure whether if we invest our resources, it's going to yield what we want. We are not sure whether our rights will be abused, and you have all talked about this here today. You need to recognize that as the future leaders, in order for the Gambia to grow, for the Gambia to move, for the Gambia to develop, you need to be peaceful. We need to take the right trajectory. We need to encourage people so that people will bring in their resources. Investors will not come to a place where there is prevarication, where there is likelihood of crisis, and that is going to affect unemployment to all of you. You are all university graduates, I believe, and if not, you are all striving to go high. And when you finish, you either want to be involved in work, either as individuals in your own right in the private sector, or you want to work in the government, or you want to be consultants. Now, for that to happen, for those jobs to be created, you have to have the rightful engagement, the peaceful environment for you to go, and I believe that we should. Now, the social dimensions, when you have a change and you want to come in politics, everybody has a right to involve in politics. I want to make that very clear. And if you are involved in politics, it should be based on politics of development. You have the right to belong to any party for that matter. Whatever party you belong, look at the agenda of the party and not the individuals. Look at what is in the best interest of your country and push it. That's what you need to look at. It's not about that and that, because we know there are lots of things going on. And I am here speaking to you because as an activist and also work with someone in this country. I did certain things for the purpose of wanting it to bring peace, prosperity, and development, and bring hope to the eyes of the young people, the people who lost hope going through the bad way. Because it's not that they like it, they knew death was on the way, that the back way is a death trap. But they decided to leave because there was no hope. That is why we engaged. And engaging means making certain decisions in order to give hope to the world that we can do our work peacefully, we can change the country context peacefully, and make sure that we install democracy, human rights, rule of law, fundamental freedoms, and civil liberties in the Gambia. And that has happened. I think today, what we need to think about is how do we now leverage on that enabling environment on which we have built, that you are sitting down today to discuss, engage intellectually, bringing in your skills, bringing in your efforts, and doing your efforts, listening to these young intellectuals. I'm really proud of you. Listening to both men and women sitting down, doing the critical analysis and using the creative arts. When I listen to some of the messages that we use, the poets we are talking about, I was very proud and elated. The message was very clear. The information was very clear. And it creates that unity that is also part of the diversity. I want you to understand diversity from a very critical point of view. Diversity that is going to be very positive and not to use it as a tool of engineering hate speech, of engineering fight, or to say we and they, we are all Gambia, our homeland. We live together. We strive together. If there is peace, it will fall on all of us. If there is crisis, it will fall on all of us. And that is the reason why it is important that this today's conference, centered on the role model, His Excellency President Dawda Kairaba Jawara, who has been a peace advocate and was being carried everywhere in the world. That is the gas and oil of the Gambia today. It is this peace that is going to bring the progress. It is this peace that is going to make us have the right investment from abroad, that we will have the right type of education, that we will build the best institutions, that we will be able to create progress for this country and make sure that all of you who are here and those who did not have the opportunities to be here will benefit to move the Gambia to another level. I think that's very important. The other aspect I wanted to talk about was you talked about social dimensions. Now, when you look at society, we are not homogeneous, and there is no homogeneous society. It's a question of the numbers, who has more numbers than the others. You want to look at also social development. When a country is going to be measured or giving indicators, they're looking at how much of the people are educated, literacy. You want to look at literacy as one of the indicators of change. You want to look at how much is the GDP in terms of how can the country move. You want to find out how do they coexist. You want to find out what are the policies that are in place that will give people the opportunities, the scholarships, that they need to go to school. How do we create a health sector where men and women have access to, and where people with very specific needs like disability, people who have different difficulties can benefit from, and what are some of the policies that we are going to put in place that will provide, or how are we going to increase the salaries? How are we going to make sure that people have a decent salary so that the issue of corruption that you have been talking about will be forestalled? These are things because there are different effects, and we must understand the policy context. We must understand how policies move. And when you make the policy, it's not about saying it and then it happens. It's not possible. You have to guide it. You have to follow it. You have to let it bring in resources. You have to build the capacity. You raise the sense of capacity. And here it is today. You are a fact. We need capacity. We have emerged from a very difficult situation where there is a high attrition rate of people with intellectual ability and pride. People where the Gambia was being seen as a country that needs to move forward, and the best practices, people come here to learn about our administration. But we lost all those things, and now, as you said, we are going to relearn, we are going to reconstruct, we are going to look at the best practices and learn how we are going to move it. That can only happen in a very peaceful environment. Now, to create that peaceful environment, There are certain things that democracy is very fundamental to that. Democracy is fundamental to that. And if I may just go a little bit on that, from the popular definitions, I don't want to delve into definitions, but I want to pragmatize what is happening. It's about the rule by the people, for the people, with the people, based on rule of law, procedures and processes to achieve our development targets and goals. How do we do that? You need to have a trajectory. We need to follow a trajectory that is focused, that is going to have be delivered in an enabling environment that is going to help us move that environment and achieve our targets. And today I want to give you a good example. Gambia has been rated as one of the best democracies in the Gambia. I think you've read it, in Africa. If you read the newspapers, I am telling you, if you read the newspapers and you read the human rights reports, they have appreciated what is going on, but because we have policies, we have plans, and we have put democracy in the forefront, and democracy is all about rule of law. I was very elated, very happy when I heard some of the panelists saying that we must not rise just because we want to rise. We must not rise because we are sentimental. We must not rise to take the law in our hands, but we must respect the rule of law. We must ensure that we follow the rule of law, and that is what democracy is all about. You have seen instances where this government, current government, has been taken to court and they have lost and they didn't interfere. You have seen those instances. You have seen instances where people are expressing themselves the way and manner they like because it's about freedom of expression. But if everything that you do, where the rule is brought in, you have to take it. Where there is a law, you have responsibility and obligation. Now, those are the obligations and the rules and responsibility. Is what I believe is the mismatch in the current context of the debates that we are talking about in terms of the social media. Because essentially, what we are talking about is the social media. But the social media is a very good tool, a very positive tool if we use it positively, we use it constructively and responsibly, because it opens the Pandora box of engagement to learn, to know, to advance knowledge, to be creative, and promote peace, prosperity, development, and sustainability if we are ready. But it could also be abused by people who could use it for their own needs because of their own political sentimentalities. Once you are not in the same political party with me, I am not in the same frame of mind, then my topic, your topic today is going to be on X or Y. Now, I think in order for us to maintain that peace, that trajectory, and the world recognition of the Gambia at this current political trajectory, because it's very important, we must have to do some behavioral, we have to have some behavioral change. Behavioral change is about, first and foremost, like you said, starting with yourselves, individually. What am I going to do to move my country forward and to improve on the way that I think? What am I going to do to ensure that you have experienced a bit of difficulties? I know there are families whose lives have been affected by certain things. We all know that many people were victims. But do we have to still play the victim role? If we are going to play, and we do, to bring that positive change and say, never again shall it be, we want peace, prosperity, and sustainability. By working on yourself first. How did I work on myself? You all knew that I was abused and my rights were violated. For those of you who read and look at the history and the context of my coming out, to promote peace and development, I said, I am going to take a pragmatic approach to this. I want my children, somebody's children, and the young ones tomorrow, because I have seen the amount of attrition and the backway syndrome, how it impacted on our children and families, and how this also is negatively impacting on our development trajectory. We want many academics, we want many professors, we want engineers, we want doctors, we want scientists, we want agriculturists, we want physicists. If everybody leaves the country because there is no hope, but nobody can change it, like you rightly said, us. We have to change it so that people will join us to change it, I decided to come out as a presidential candidate. I came out not because I was interested in politics. I'm not. I was interested in trying to come out as a front to give hope to the young people, to the women, to the vulnerable, and to tell you all out there are intellectuals, there are people who have the ability and can run this country. If nobody is coming, I am coming out. And it has resulted in galvanizing a powerful body where all political parties came together, analyzed the situation because there were reflections. I am an insider to the change, so I know what I'm talking about. Reflections were done, we agreed, and one person was brought in to engage. We must, whatever it takes, let us follow, let us make the world know that we can do it, and we have done it. Today, we are getting the indicators, we are getting all these pre-appraisals, we are getting all these appreciations, because we were able to muster for it and do it. We can do it, and I know you can do it, you have done it. You have done it. And the fact that you have done it, we are here to support you. We are here to encourage you. We are here to tell you, and how does that happen? It starts with policy. It starts with policy. It starts with planning. It starts with resources. It also needs the enabling environment of peace and tranquility. If you have a plan, national development plan, and there is strike every day, there is fight every day, there are insults here and there, going to court, going to police, and all these things, how are we going to give confidence to the donors and our partners that Gambia is ready to improve agriculture, to improve education, to educate our people and produce science? How are they? And you have right to belong to anywhere. But when you deal with partisan politics, look at programs, progress, and what you believe in, respect it and try to convince each other to move forward. Because in democracy it's about multi-party. We don't want it to be a single party. It's not right. It's wrong. All that we are going to do is to make sure that people play and respect the rules. If there are 2 times engagement, let us play and walk out. Let others come. But even if we stand up to say forever, whoever is the ruling party will tell you we want to be forever. Ask yourself the rhetoric. You are the cause of the problem. Now, what do we do if we want to maintain this democracy? You talked about which is quite corrupted. You talked about the emerging issues. You talked about the multi-ethnic composition. Has always been very good, and I agree with you. That is a leverage we must take care of. Let us try to look at it. God created us and put us into different groups. Even in the Quran, if you read the Quran, there are different ummahs. There are different schools of us. These are all things that are diverse. But the monotheism, the belief in monotheism, the oneness of Allah, and all the other pillars in Islam, because of Muslims, and also in Christianity, whatever they do is about. Let us look at the common pillars, build upon them, strengthen them, and live peacefully and coexist peacefully if we want to maintain sustainable development. The world is moving, you know. We cannot afford to be used as fodder politically, Islam-wise, for people to push their agenda. And that way, it will create tension and will affect the development cycle. This government is doing it right. I am not saying it because I am part of it or I am part of it. I came with an agenda and I have fulfilled that. All I want to say is that I will call your attention to the fact that let us all live peace, promote peace, bring peace together, put it on the table, work on peace so that everybody, irrespective of the diversity, will be able to benefit from the dividend that democracy is giving to us. Let us see it that way. Let us not hate each other. Let us stop the hate speech. I wrote beautiful papers on hate speech. I will share it with the university. Because when I was in the field of academics, before I got into politics, I have been writing on matters on human rights. Hate speech is a human rights issue. And I have presented papers in different UNESCO and other parts of the world. So I have my manuscripts, I have a lot of things that are there. So now I'm trying to engage to bring in the dimension that some of you have touched and move on. You talked about inclusive governance structures. Yes, it has been beautifully analyzed by Madam Diba. One of the minds. You see, when you talk about inclusiveness, irrespective of your gender, your class, your sex, if you are discriminated, it's abuse of what human rights. Now, when you come to do the analysis, you will find that in our analysis, women, people with disability, have been discriminated upon. So therefore, we have to include them. We have to think about them. She mentioned of the current government. Yes, I agree with you. Indeed, that is an executive decision. It's not because it belongs to the purview of the cabinet. I want to let you know that if the political leader is interested in promoting women's advancement and says, this is what I want, this is what is going to happen. But it's a process and evolving and it's going to happen. You also understand that there are too many demands and we are trying to juggle with all these things. So I believe the issue raised with regard to the lack of representation of women and people with disabilities, and especially young people, you need to be mentored, you need to be encouraged, and I see potential in you. And I am telling you, I really engage you every year, you do this session, let me know. And you try as much as possible. As a peace ambassador, I started this work more than 10 years ago. I will try to see how we can play on together and see where we can move to build it as a legacy. It's not only about building this country, but put it as part of the center of academic engagement of the university. Because this is how we call legacy, that we invite the people to get international lecturers, get people to come. This is just the beginning to be able to engage on something. Because now we can hear, there is progress, and I'm very pleased with that. There is progress, and that progress needs to be maintained, that progress needs to be nurtured, that progress needs to move, and we must move. We must move because if all of us have the opportunity to educate, not so we are far from it. But those of us who have ability and opportunity to engage constructively to help those communities, we must uplift the people. We must be there to change, and that is what fundamentally I am trying to do, and others we are trying to do to come together. And there is unity of purpose. Inclusivity creates a very powerful tool for advancement. If all the parties were not included, if individuals, activists, civil society, young people were not included, would we have organized change? It is not possible because we have a very powerful dictator, a very powerful one, and everywhere in the world to change. You need the concerted effort, including everybody. Why is it that I hate environmentalists? Look, we are all human beings. This ethnicity was created by the Lord Almighty or whatever. But the election, we are all human beings and we all have rights. Our rights must be protected, irrespective of who you are, irrespective of where you are, and irrespective of what you do. So this issue of ethnicity, I want all of you to consider yourselves as Gambians. If you consider yourselves as Gambians, wallahi tallahi, you are going to move forward. Because that should be the final discussion I want to make here is this. The final thing I want to say here is that you were talking about the Rwandan case. Now, Rwanda, we all know where Rwanda came from. It was as a result of ethnic diversity, the Hutus and the Tutsis. There were hate speeches. A lot of things have gone, and it's well documented. But what brought Rwanda where it is because of the leadership. If you have a leadership that has a direction, you have a leadership that moves forward, you have a leadership that is there, you get to follow your plan, and you have a good, highly educated people, and people with skill, and people who can advise you. You get the diversity in your consideration. We are going to succeed, and I can tell you we are going to succeed. But let us respect each other. Rwanda was able to do what it is because of the direction. They had a good direction, following their national development plan, encouraging the young people with capacity who are allowed to lead, and also giving respect and recognizing the helping them to are encouraging the most leverage the demographic division. You are 65% of the population. I am very proud. How many of you here does not want to go to university? Everybody wants to be. And it's university. You need to do what they lost. And this is the category of people we need to think about. If not vision for the future, it's very important. Because we need to encourage and educate our people. In order for us to get constructively, to follow and to respect our leaders. Then we have be patient. You should address the gender. You must be patient. I had one of the intellectuals. I appreciate Mr. Kai's analysis very much. But I also want to disagree on something else. You don't apply the rule of law action. If you want to try to say I'm going to set a big example, that's not as an activist, I can tell you that. And one, the leaders start saying I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this without taking responsibility. We do not.